Hi, this is the lovely or talented Kacey Jones wishing my friend John Broughton a happy 20 years in radio on Retrospectives 3SER Kacey Radio. Congratulations, John.
Terrific. Did you grow up with musical ambitions at all? When did music become a career choice for you?
I don't know if I chose it. I think it chose me. When I was a child, I used to bang around on my grandmother's piano, and I seemed to have a natural ability for pounding out little melodies even when I was 4 or 5 years old. So I started taking classical piano lessons when I was 7, and I took classical piano lessons for 10 years and learning Beethoven, Bach, Chopin, Liszt, playing piano concerts and recitals and that type of thing. And then at the same time during the piano lessons, I also played string bass in the school orchestra. And that's not because I chose the string bass on purpose, but on the day that they handed out the musical instruments for the band and orchestra, I was absent. And so the next day when I came back to school, the only 2 instruments left were the piccolo and the string bass, and I hated the piccolo. So I remember years later when my father was carting me around in the family station wagon with that string bass in the back, and one day he unloaded me at some gig that I was doing, and he said, "Couldn't you have just played the piccolo?" But that was a good, playing the bass for all those years was a very good, no pun intended, basis for learning I taught myself the guitar right around when I was about 14, 15 years old. Because at the same time that I was taking classical piano lessons, my younger brother was taking classical guitar lessons. And the problem with classical piano for me was that I couldn't sing, number one, with Beethoven. And number two, I wanted to be playing the songs by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Janis Joplin and also some of the blues artists like B.B. King and Ella Fitzgerald and Ella Fitzgerald and Etta James. So I used to go in and sneak in my brother's room and take his guitar at nighttime, and I would teach myself how to play the guitar so that I could play all those rock and roll songs. And next thing you knew, I was singing and playing guitar in a band in high school. And I gave up the classical piano lessons, much to my mother's dismay. But that's I can't remember not playing music.
Yeah.
It's been with me. Both my mother and dad were pretty good singers, not professionals, but they used to sing in church. And my dad played the trombone and my mother played the piano, so I was luckily surrounded by music from ever since I can remember.
Now, a group you were involved with was Ethel and the Shameless Hussies. We didn't hear too much about them down here. Can you tell us all about them?
Well, actually, we had a big fan down there in Australia in the form of a guy named David Dawson.
Ah, yes.
David actually used to write a lot of things about the Ethel and the Shameless Hussies, and we tried very hard to get MCA Records to distribute our album down there because we figured that Shameless Hussies were something that Australians would actually understand more quickly than Americans. But we failed in our attempt to get them to do that, and it was a great band. It was just about 10 years ahead of its time, but I do believe that it was myself and 2 other girls, and it was probably the most outlandish act that had ever come out of Nashville at that time because of our costumes and stuff. We used to wear stiletto heels and beehive wigs and push-em-up bras and spandex and animal print and all these astro colors. And we were kind of like Bette Midler and the Harlettes, only countrified.
Ah, yes.
Uh-huh. And like I said, unfortunately, we were about 10 years ahead of our time for the Bible Belt. But I do believe that Ethel and the Shameless Hussies helped to pave the way for acts like the Dixie Chicks.
Yep.
And so I'm proud of that.
Pretty much a good idea, the career direction you wanted to take when the Shameless Hussies finished up?
No, we were together for 4 years, and when it all fell apart, it was really devastating because we had all put so much of our heart and soul into it, and not only did the band fall apart, but my marriage fell apart. I got divorced at that time, and a lot of other things in my life kind of took a nosedive. So I moved. I'm originally from California. I grew up there, but I moved to Nashville in 1986, and then I got signed to MCA Records in 1987. So I was here from 86 to 90, and then I moved back to California for what I thought was going to be 1 year, and it ended up being 4 years, just trying to get my life back together. And then the big earthquake happened in Southern California in March of 94, actually February of 94, and all my stuff was in a pile on the floor from the earthquake, and I said, I've been thinking about moving back to Nashville anyway. Now seems like a good time.
Yeah.
So I came back to Nashville in 94 after really struggling in L.A. It was really a hard town for me to make a living in because, the pay is not that great for musicians there, and in order to make a living, you've got to play 6 or 7 nights a week, and it just kicks your butt, So I came back here in 94 with the idea of getting a solo deal, and it didn't happen for me until 1997. I became a staff writer for another publishing company. I had a bunch of songs put on hold by major artists, but none of them ever got cut, so I was struggling again, trying to keep things going. And then in 1997, I was playing at the Improv in Hollywood, which is a rather famous comedy club, and Buddy Killen happened to be in the audience, and he's a rather well-known record producer here in Nashville. And when I got off the stage, he said, "Do you have any thing on tape that represents like what you did here tonight, which was a combination of music and comedy?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got a show from the Bluebird Cafe over here in Nashville." And so I gave him that tape, and he gave it to Mike Curb on a Friday, and on the following Monday I had a record deal. So it was, we were back in the big time again, after nearly a decade of being practically anonymous, But and then at the very same time that I got my deal on Curb as an artist, I signed on to produce a rather major project for Kinky Friedman called Pearls in the Snow, which took me about 2.5 years to complete that project. So when I wasn't on the road promoting my own record, I was on the road producing the artists that are on Pearls in the Snow, which include Willie Nelson, Dwight Yoakam, Lyle Lovett, Asleep at the Wheel, Guy Clark, Delbert McClinton, Leroy Parnell, Tom Waits, Tom Paul Glaser, who, of course, was one of the original Outlaws with Waylon Jennings. I don't know if you guys have gotten the news yet or not.
Yes, we did, yeah.
Yeah, we lost Waylon yesterday, so...
For shame.
That was a real shame. Waylon, actually, there's a cameo appearance of Waylon Jennings on the Ethel and the Shameless Hussies CD. There's a song on there called Last Night I Really Laid Down the Law, and it's about talking your way out of a speeding ticket successfully.
Oh, yeah.
And Waylon plays the part, on that track he plays the part of the Tennessee State Trooper. And you can hear his very distinctive voice on the very beginning as well as on the end of that particular track. So I got to know Waylon fairly well because we were on MCA Records at the same time. And Tom Paul Glaser, who, like I mentioned before, is one of the original Outlaws, Tom Paul produced Ethel and the Shameless Hussies for MCA. So I got involved in that whole Outlaw bunch early on in my career. I also became friends with David Allan Coe, because he recorded one of my songs on an album he did for CBS. So I got in with the wrong crowd right away.
Humour is such a key element in your work. Could you imagine music without humour?
Well, on my album, the album that has been released in Australia, which the title is Every Man I Love Is Either Married, Gay, or Dead, that album, for the first time in my career, I experimented with putting half funny songs and half serious songs. And I was able to do that this time because I own the record label.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have anybody telling me what to do, basically. I was able to experiment with the idea of showing my listeners that I was three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And, I really enjoy doing the humorous material, and I very much enjoy performing it because I love to make people laugh. But I did not start out my career to be a musical humorist or a comedian or anything like that. It just purely by accident did that happen. And I have a penchant for writing funny songs, but I'm also very proud of some of the serious songs I've written, which you can hear a couple of them on the new album, Every Man I Love Is Either Married, Gay, or Dead.
So it is a concern to you that perhaps you were being recognised a little bit too much just for the humorous side of your material?
Well, the thing is, there's nothing you can do about that, John. It's like, if you start out your career in Nashville with an act called Ethel and the Shameless Hussies, you better be ready to, to saddle up for the rest of your career with people identifying you with humor.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, people in general, I'm not saying the audience so much, but people that work in the music industry like to categorize you because it's easier for them to do that than it is to think about you being more than one thing. And that's certainly what has happened. Ray Stevens and I discussed this very early on because Ray Stevens, as you know, is known for his funny songs, everything from Ahab to Arab to his current single, which is called Osama Yo Mama. And yet Ray is the same guy that wrote and sang beautifully that song, Everything is Beautiful. But he warned me ahead of time. He says, man, if you're going to start down this path of humor, you better be prepared to stick with it for a long time, because people usually don't let you be more than one thing, at least not on Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee. So hopefully the audience is a little smarter than the executives in Nashville, because I do appreciate the opportunity to show both sides of my writing ability and my singing ability, and I get lots of compliments all the time as with regard to my singing voice, whether I'm singing funny stuff or serious stuff. So at least that seems to translate to everybody that I know how to sing. But I have another album that I'm working on right now, which is called Songs for Sweet Potato Queens. And Sweet Potato Queens is a worldwide organization that has currently about 7,000 members. The whole thing was started by a couple of books that were written by my friend Jill Connor Brown. The first one's called The Sweet Potato Queens Book of Love, and the second one's called God Save the Sweet Potato Queens. And for anybody within the sound of my voice that is interested in finding out about this, you can go to on the internet at www.sweetpotatoqueens.com and find out more about it. But it's just a very fun organization. There's chapters, 1,300 chapters in the United States, and there's even a chapter in Saudi Arabia whose motto is "No veils for us." And anyway, I've written a whole album of songs inspired by those two books that Jill wrote, and I actually have an official title with that organization. My title is Royal Minstrel to the Queen's Court. I'm getting ready to go down on St. Patrick's Day in March to perform at their annual ball and parade. I played there last year, and there were 65,000 spectators and the CBS Morning News, plus about 5,000 sweet potato queens from all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh. I wouldn't be surprised if there are several chapters in Australia, but I don't know for sure. If there aren't any chapters in Australia, I highly recommend that some creative women get together and put together a chapter, because it's fun. And what I was getting at was, on that CD, there are mainly up-tempo and fun-type songs, but there's also a couple ballads on there. So, and when I do a live show, I try to mix up the serious stuff with the humorous stuff. It kind of just depends on the attitude of the audience. If they want to be entertained with humor, then I'm ready. And if they want to hear something a little more, sensitive, then I'm ready to share that part of me too.
The Kiki Friedman tribute album that you produced, were you also involved in the selection process of the artists, matching them up with the songs?
I was involved with everything, John. I was involved with way more than I wanted to be involved. That album was like the project that would never end, KIKI and I own a record label together here in Nashville called KIKI Records. And so, yes, I was very involved with helping to... KIKI brought in most of the artists just because he had a history of friendship with them. I brought in Guy Clark and Tom Waits, and KIKI mainly brought in most of the other guys. He and Willie are very good friends. So they're on the album in the order that I recorded them. Willie was our very first guy, and Tom Waits was our last one. And then, as a matter of fact, we ended up waiting for about 4 months for Tom to get his track done. It almost went out of the box without his track, but I'm glad we waited because it's a pretty good track. But yeah, I was involved with everything in that album in terms of designing the graphics for the album cover, as well as helping to pitch the songs. I pitched about a dozen songs to almost every artist, a dozen of KIKI songs, because obviously all these songs that are on that album are songs that were written by KIKI. And I even sang a song with him on that album. There's a track on there called Marilyn and Joe, which is about Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, and he and I do a duet on that particular track, which should be on your NFS disc.
Oh, yes it is. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's me and the Kinksters singing that little song right there.
Must have been a huge challenge, the project. Did you find yourself working and producing so many different artists in that project, having to adapt and change the style and the way you approach the production with each artist?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Well, for starters, just from a technical standpoint, because of the fact that I recorded that album in so many different studios, I was with Willie, I was on 24-track analog. With the Giesenslaws, I was on 32-track digital. With Asleep at the Wheel and Lyle Lovett and Dwight Yoakam, I was on 32-track ADAT.
Wow.
And with Guy Clark and Delbert McClinton and Leroy Parnell, it was 48-track digital. So it was really a trick to dump everything onto 48-track digital and keep that original, keep the freshness of all of those tracks as they were originally recorded. But I think we did a pretty good job. I worked with some great engineers, and they were very nice to let a chick boss them around. But it was a bit of a challenge being the only female involved in a project that had exclusively hairy-legged men. We actually had thought about putting some other women on the album. KIKI wanted to get K.D. Lang to do Get Your Biscuits in the Oven and Your Buns in the Bed, but she turned us down. So we got Tom Paul Glaser to do that one instead, and he did a great job. But yeah, it was a monumental project for sure. I had no idea that I was signing on for such a tremendous undertaking. But I'm very proud of what we accomplished, and we ended up taking that album to #1 here in the U.S. on what's known as the Americana radio chart. So it was worth it.
It was worth it in the end. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Songwriting, do you actively seek subject matter for songwriting, or do you just rely on the ideas to just spring to mind naturally?
Well, it depends. If I'm writing a serious song, which, like I said, we're going to have to make sure we ship you over some albums so that, well, you have those albums, don't you?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you go to, for example, on my own album, there is a track on there called Collector of People.
Yes.
And now that's a song that I didn't even really know I was going to write, but I was feeling very sad about something during the time that I was writing that. And that song just kind of evolved out of some feelings that I was trying to... a lot of times songwriting for me, and I'm sure it is for many songwriters, it's a therapy. And especially if it's a sad song, you know, you can ease your own pain a lot by getting it out of your system and putting it on paper and putting a melody to it. There's another song, just in terms of ballads, on my Every Man I Love album, which is called Geography, and that song was actually written by KIKI. And the interesting thing about that song is that I had pitched that song to every single person that is on Pearls in the Snow, and for whatever reasons, nobody chose it. And I just think it's a beautiful song, so I said, well, heck, I'm going to put it on my own album. But, and just for your own information, the reason why the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow is on my Every Man I Love album is because that was my mother's favorite song, and she died a few years ago, and I was supposed to sing that song at her memorial service, and I tried to do that, and I just couldn't get through it. It was just too emotional for me, so I put it on this album as sort of a make-up call to my mother, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But when it comes to humorous songs, a lot of times what happens is I'll think of the title first, okay, and then I'll write. I'm excellent at writing the title, the chorus, the hook, and the first verse, and then sometimes I get stymied on the second verse. So that's when I'll bring in a co-writer sometimes to just help me finish up the story. But inspiration can come from anywhere. I mean, I wrote a hit for Mickey Gilley back in 1985, and it came from somebody's T-shirt. You know, I was walking down the street with my friend Mickey James. We were walking down Hollywood Boulevard in California, and we saw a guy wearing a T-shirt that said, "We're the ones your parents warned you about." And we turned that around and called it "I'm the One Mama Warned You About," and it became a top 5 hit for Mickey Gilley back in 1985. So you never know. You know, you got to, as a songwriter, you kind of learn to keep your ears and eyes open for all kinds of things that you can turn into a song. You know, I mean, sometimes you can be in a conversation with somebody and they don't even realize it, but they just gave you the best one-liner in the world. So you go home and write it and hope you wrote it before somebody else does.
How do you feel when you see a review of one of your CDs and the term male basher is brought up?
Well, I think that my form of male bashing is a kinder and gentler form than most women that get accused of that. The fact is, I love men. I just don't understand them. I mean, I think that every girl ought to have at least 2 or 3, you know. I mean, 2 or 3, one cute one, one that will take you to dinner, one that'll take you dancing, one that can fix stuff. You know, you got to have a man around that knows how to fix stuff, like if the faucet breaks or if the, you know.
Yeah.
that's a definite. And then, of course, one that you can, you know.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I have not found in one single man, I haven't found one that can do all that stuff. So, and I just don't know how to pick them. I always pick the ones that either break my heart or take my money or both. And so I have plenty of fodder for writing those kind of songs. But again, even a song like On Every Man I Love, you'll notice there's a song called But I'm Not Bitter.
Oh, I love that song.
Which, the entire title being, I hate your lousy, rotten, stinking guts, but I'm not bitter. And that was inspired by my ex-husband.
Ah.
You know, I don't feel badly about that song at all. I mean, let them call me a male basher, but he deserved it, you know.
Yeah. It's probably quite therapeutic writing that song.
Oh, let me tell you what, that song probably kept me out of jail. Because if I hadn't written a song like that, I probably would have strangled him with my bare hands. But, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say there's a nice duet with Delbert McClinton on that CD. Did you always figure him as the other half of that duet?
Did I always figure him to be that?
To be the other half of that duet? Was he the one you had picked out for that right away?
Well, no. What happened was, you know, that's an old song by Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn. It was never a single for them, but it was released as a B-side back in 1975 or 6, something like that. And I had been familiar with the song for many years. And when I produced Delbert for KIKI's Pearls in the Snow album back in 1998 or whatever that was, 97, during the time that I was recording his voice for Pearls in the Snow, and he cut a beautiful song of KIKI's called Autograph, by the way. He did a great job on it. Anyway, well, as I was mixing his voice for that album, I thought, man, this is the guy I need to sing You're the Reason Our Kids Are Ugly, because I've been carrying that idea of recording Kids Are Ugly around with me for years, and I just had never found anybody that I thought would that I would blend with. And Delbert and I had a great time singing it together, and we also made a music video, which I hope is playing somewhere in Australia, because we went to some considerable expense to get it transferred into a PAL format. So hopefully, have you seen it anywhere yet?
I haven't seen it, but I'll start looking out for it. Yeah.
Okay, it's a real cute video. It's Delbert and me and 6 kids, 5 white ones and 1 black one. And we just had a great time. And in fact, his daughter is in the video with us too. So it was great.
I'll keep an eye out for that. Also, an interesting cover is the Tom Waits song on the album. Any particular reason you chose that one?
I just think it's one of the best written songs I've ever heard in my life. The song you're referring to is called Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis. And I have been performing that song live in my live show for the last 15 years because I just thought it was one of the best written songs I'd ever heard. I mean, you can close your eyes and listen to the words of that song and you can see the whole movie play. It's like all of Tom's songs are like little movies.
Yeah.
He is one of my very, very favorite songwriters of all time. And again, because of the fact that I own the label, I had the opportunity to choose things that I really wanted to do that I never had a chance to do before. And that's not to say that I'm not proud of the album that I did for Curb Records. I did an album for them entitled Men Are Some of My Favorite People. And that I'm very proud of that piece of work. What that was a live album with a live audience, and my entire band was with me. And it's like original funny songs segued with stand-up comedy bits. And, you know, we ended up selling about 30,000 units over here, which is not great shakes, but it wasn't too bad. And so I'm very proud of that album. It's just that when I got a chance to do this new one, the one that you have, I just wanted to stretch out a little bit. And I love that song, Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis, which, by the way, the very last line, since we happen to be talking on Valentine's Day here, John, is, in fact, I'm going to be singing that song tonight at the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville because of the fact that the very last line is, I'll be eligible for parole come Valentine's Day. And that's, so it's, everybody thinks that they see that title, Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis, thinking that it's going to be a funny song. And indeed, there are some moments in it that are humorous, but it's actually a very, very sad song.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad you like it.
Oh, it's a lovely rendition. Has Tom heard it?
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
And he likes it. At least he said he liked it. There's been several other acts that have covered that song, and I've heard their versions of it. I think mine is a little more like the way he does it himself. Yeah. So, he told me he liked it.
You mentioned, is that pretty much a good example, a typical example of your live show?
Excuse me?
The live CD, the first one you put out, is that a pretty good representation of your live shows, or do they vary a bit?
Well, I mean, it's a good example of my live comedy show. I mean, yes, that's a good representation. I do a lot of, not a lot, but I do a certain amount of patter with the audience in between songs, and occasionally I involve audience members in what I'm doing, depending on what it is. The only thing different from that album to what I normally do in a live show is I will throw in one or two ballads, just because I like the idea of being able to take the audience from sort of a gleeful high into a more sensitive and sometimes sensuous place, and then bring them back out of that. It's kind of like the peaks and valleys of the program. It's good to have it be, you don't want the thing to just be a flat line, even if they're laughing continuously. It's better to, for me anyway, I enjoy that. I hate to use the word manipulate, but that's kind of what it is. Is you're manipulating the audience to go where you go emotionally, whether it's funny or sad or romantic, whatever it might be.
I believe you're involved in a bit of radio work over there yourself.
I am. You may now refer to me as ABC radio personality Kacey Jones. And when I say ABC, of course, I'm talking about the American Broadcasting Company. I do a radio show every Wednesday morning from my kitchen here in Nashville. In fact, my portion of the show is called Casey's Kitchen. And I broadcast live. I have a hookup with the disc jockey that I work with is named Charlie Derrick, and he's in Dallas and I'm in Nashville. But we broadcast every Wednesday. I'm on for about an hour. And I just mainly provide support for whatever he's doing, whatever they're talking about. And sometimes I play my guitar live from the kitchen. I offer Casey's kitchen tips, and like if you want breakfast in bed, I can't even remember what I was going to say. There is no breakfast in bed in Casey's kitchen. What I was going to say is the show is broadcast to 2 million listeners here. And we're on about 200 stations nationwide. It's syndicated nationally and mainly small markets. But we, all told, we have about 2 million listeners. So It's a great platform for me as an artist and as an entertainer, and it certainly has helped bring some people to my website. Would you mind if I mention my website?
Oh, it's just about to anyway, but go ahead, yeah.
For those of you who are interested, please come and visit me at www.kaceyjones.com, and that is spelled KACEYJONES.com. You'll find me there, and you can email me there, and I try to return all my emails myself if I can. And KIKI and I, as I mentioned, Kinky Friedman and I have a record label that has another website where we offer a lot of Kinky Friedman product that is almost impossible to find anyplace else. I think we have probably the most Kinky Friedman merchandise on the planet Earth, so anybody who's a Kinky fan can go to kinkajourecords.com, which is www.kinkajou records.com. Do you know what a kinkajou is, John?
I was wondering.
Well, it's a small, tameable, furry mammal, somewhat like yourself, found in the jungles of Central and South America, and it has a prehensile tail. Our kinkajou is wearing a 10-gallon Texas cowboy hat with the Star of David on it, and smoking a cigar. After our Kinky doesn't really have anything to do with the daily running of Kinkajou Records. He likes to think of himself as may I quote him, as the Gandhi-like figure of Kinkajou Records.
I have heard him refer to himself as that before, yeah.
And he's on a big old tour down there right now. He and Billy Joe Shaver and
right, he's
Lil
just left town.
So yeah, I called him yesterday to let him know about Waylon. And as far as I can tell, he's having a big old time there.
Yeah,
I'm hoping to get to Australia myself this year. I don't know when, but we're trying to create a little more of a demand down there so that we can go down and do some concerts and, have it all make sense. So
fantastic.
I totally appreciate you playing my music and playing Kinky's music, and I think we have a track on there by Chris Ramey too, don't we? Chris Ramey is also an artist on Kinkajou Records.
Oh yes.
And there's a song on that NFS disc called 9 Pound Hammer, which you might share with your audience. He's an excellent guitar player and a great singer, and a very good friend of mine from California. So.
Now that website again is CaceyJones.com, where you can buy all the necessary Kacey Jones merchandise, as well as an item called the Johnny Light, which I have to ask you about.
The Johnny Light, yes. The Johnny Light it was invented by a very good friend of mine named Bill Bradford he's near Dallas, Texas. And the Johnny Light is a light that you can attach to your toilet, and I'm sure this problem must exist in Australia because it exists in every country I've ever been in, where the man leaves the toilet seat up. And so when the woman goes in to sit down on the toilet, especially if it's dark at nighttime, and if the seat's up, then of course the woman goes, falling through that porcelain throne like Humpty Dumpty, and it's just it creates discord between man and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or whatever. So the Johnny Light, first of all, is lighting the way to family harmony is the motto, and I will say that it's much less expensive than a marriage counselor, and it's very reasonably priced. We sell them on my website. It makes a great gift for the person who has everything. I think they're only like $10 on my website. And the reason why I'm associated with the Johnny Light is because on the album that I did for Curb Records, Men Are Some of My Favorite People, there is a song called Put the Seat Back Down. And it was inspired by the very same Kinky Friedman that we have been speaking of earlier. Kinky has been to my house many times in Nashville as a house pest. And because of the fact that he proudly considers himself a male chauvinist pig, he also proudly leaves the toilet seat up wherever he chooses to go. And one day, sure enough, I went in there and I wasn't paying attention. I went to sit down, and it was a long fall down to the bottom, So anyway, it inspired the song Put the Seat Back Down, and Bill Bradford somehow found out about the song and contacted me, and he said, may I use your song to help promote my product? I said, sure. just send me some of those Johnny lights. So he and I have struck up a friendship and helped each other ever since then. And he's doing pretty good. They're in we have a big chain of hardware stores over here called Lowe's, and he's got them in all the Lowe's hardware stores. So here's a guy who used to be a nuclear physicist that quit his job so he could invent the Johnny light.
Now he's in the business of saving marriages.
Yes, exactly. So that's where that comes from.
I have to ask you about one of my favourite tracks, the Peanut Sonata.
Peanut Sonata. Oh, that's about my little doggy Peanut. Peanut is the cutest dog on the planet. She looks like the love child of Benji and Toto. You know, Toto from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And Benji from the Benji movies. Peanut, when I got Peanut at the Utopia Animal Rescue Ranch, which is a ranch that was founded by KIKI and some other friends down in Texas. And Peanut was among the first 11 dogs that they rescued. In fact, she was rescued about an hour and a half before she was to be euthanized. And all I can tell you, she's a total joy in my life. Because I think she must know how lucky she is to be alive, because she's just so happy and cheerful and such a good friend to everybody. And she makes her singing debut on this album of mine. That's Peanut Sonata. That's a little song that I sing to her every morning when I wake up, because her favorite thing to do is to chase squirrels. So, you know, here was the clock ticking in the recording studio at $100 an hour, and my dog, I mean, she talks to me all the time, right, when we're at home. I take her into the recording studio. I couldn't get her to say a word. She wouldn't make a peep. And, you know, we're in there, the hour goes by, and I'm figuring that I'm over budget now. Finally, at the very end of the song, I got her to do a little bit of barking and stuff. So that's Peanut's singing debut. And it may be her only debut.
A little microphone shy.
Yeah.
Kacey, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute treat speaking with you. A lot of fun. And,
well, thank you so much. And again, we think you have excellent taste for considering our music, and we appreciate the opportunity to be heard there. And I sure hope that there'll be a chance for me to come and play in Australia. I've wanted to go to Australia my entire life. I don't know what it is. I think it's because it's just such a big, wonderful, mysterious land to me. I've read some books that have described the area to me, and I just can't wait to see it.
Well, we'd love to see you down here. So if something comes off, certainly let me know.
I will. And the other thing we like about Australia is I've met several Australian men, and they're just, you know, they're all sexy. They all have great senses of humor. And of course, the one that I fell in love with used to just sing me rugby songs all the time, and so I got a little bit of inspiration from those rugby songs as well. But I'll keep you posted on that, John. If I am coming down there, I'll make sure you know about it so you can help me spread the word.
Absolutely, would love to. Thanks again, Kacey. Take care, and have a good gig tonight down at the Bluebird.
Thank you, and it was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.